online broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans, producing after-shows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the After Show for Madam Secretary, Season 1, Episode 16, Tamerlane. This was a crazy episode.
It was an amazing episode.
Okay, before we get into it, guys, please go on YouTube, SoundCloud, everything. Find us at AfterBuzz TV, youtube.com/AfterBuzzTV. And of course, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at AfterBuzz TV as well. And I'm Sterling Cates, and you can find me at Sterling Cates if you want to tweet us during this show.
Hey guys, I'm April Whisenhant. You can find me at April Whisenhant on Twitter, Instagram, everything.
Yes, please tweet us during this. We love talking with you guys. Want to know your predictions, want to know what your thoughts on this episode.
Absolutely.
They were not lying when they said this 3-episode peak we would learn everything.
Everything.
And they did not disappoint either.
No, it was so good. Tonight's episode, we were literally like out of our seats half of the time.
Yeah. And I'm not gonna lie. The season, especially at the beginning, little slower, and I've heard that, read a lot of articles about it's kind of slow, blah blah. We want the answers, And this episode, by far, my favorite episode of the season.
It is. Mine too.
I was on my toes for once. You're always kind of in it, but it was action-packed.
We literally were like, several times.
Cried.
Yeah.
We laughed. We cried.
All kinds of crazy things.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into it. We know we loved it.
Yes.
So we learned last episode that Munzee was behind this coup.
Yeah.
And we don't know anyone else's involvement, really. We don't really know what Secretary Marsh's involvement exactly was, but we do know that his death wasn't an accident, and we've kind of known that the whole season.
Right. And we still don't know. That's another answer that we're still waiting for, like why he was involved or what capacity he was involved in and why he was killed because of it.
And but it seems like Elizabeth is kind of believing that he was involved in it, like he was a part of it.
Yes.
But that still doesn't explain why he was killed, though.
Right. Maybe he changed his mind, or I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe he was threatening to reveal it, or there's a disagreement. I guess we'll learn that later on in the season.
Yeah.
But also, we don't know Juliet's exact involvement. But we'll get to this later as well, that she's definitely involved. But we weren't really sure when she fled her home or whatever. We didn't know what side of it she was on exactly, but now we know she is a part of it.
Yes.
So we start off this episode with Director Munzee under surveillance. The Attorney General is involved. They have completely swept his house. But they want to do this in a way that whoever he's working with in this coup won't find out that he's being surveillance.
Exactly. But I feel like, they took away every form of communication that he would possibly have. He had to have been in almost constant contact with these people. So I'm like, clearly they're going to know something's up when it all just stops. But I mean, I understand they can't let him contact them.
Right.
So.
Well, what they should have done, it seemed like, is let him contact them.
But then, be with him.
But surveillance it, like they're doing everything else. But I guess, we learned later that they didn't really look in all the nooks and crannies.
Exactly.
But yeah, so they want to find these co-conspirators, but that makes sense that they would want to, have him call them.
Of course.
Duh. You know what I mean? But
I think
whatever.
so too. Yeah.
Anyways, so they need... but for Bess and the president and Russell, they need to prove that they're not behind the coup.
Exactly.
And there's this whole thing of whether or not they should follow behind it or whatever it is.
Well, because you have to think, during the episode, whenever the president was saying, maybe, I'm kind of thinking of getting behind this. Once something has just taken has just gone so far already. I mean, what can you really do?
Yeah.
And I mean, I get the thinking behind it of kind of being like, should we do this? Even though it's something terrible and obviously a lot of people are going to die from it. I get him at least considering it. How Beth was so shocked and like, no, we can't do that whatsoever. Yeah. It makes sense to me.
Well, it makes sense that he would also want to know, what is exactly their goal is.
Exactly.
Because they might align with whatever his goals are, and it could save people's lives. It just depends. They're just in the dark completely, so they need more information. But so Elizabeth now has to figure out who these people are that Munzee has been working with.
And who the leader is. Because the whole point of it is to take out the regime in Iran, and the Ayatollahs that they do not have a good relationship with. And so they narrow it down to those, I think it's like 4 people that it could possibly be it. Because even though Munzee is clearly like a direct and high up leader in this coup, there has to be someone, once they take out this regime, that they would have to take over.
Exactly. And who has a motive to do that and could do that, who has enough power to do that. And so obviously Elizabeth can't do this on her own, so she brings in the team, but she has to catch them up to speed. So this whole investigation has been going on the whole season, but they have no idea about it. So now she kind of has to fill them in on a very short amount of time on all of these details that have... Nadine, I feel like, has known, she's known kind some. She knows, something, just because of our history with Marsh, but, that it might not have been an accident, his death. But so the first person Elizabeth goes to is Daisy, and we were kind of left last episode with what Daisy's standing was in the office because she didn't go to that press conference.
I thought she quit.
Yeah, well, we didn't know if she had her job anymore or what, but so now we see Elizabeth goes to Daisy. Side note, Matt's there. And Elizabeth didn't officially know that Daisy and Matt were a thing, but like she says to Daisy, she's like, if you thought that no one knew, then you're completely crazy. Yeah. So obviously she's like, we have way bigger fish to fry than to
worry about office love drama.
Exactly. Matt just like skedaddles on out of there.
I thought it was a cute little scene though.
Yeah, all right. I'm more concerned with this whole like Marsh, the coup situation going on. But Elizabeth basically just tells Daisy that we need her on board, blah, blah, blah. And so they meet with the whole team. Elizabeth fills them in, says she has 7 potential leaders, and the team quickly narrows it down to the 4. And so now they just have to figure out what the connection is. Like if there's a connection with Marsh and if there's a connection with Munzee and where they all could have met.
Exactly. And during this whole scene, another insanely huge bomb dropped when Nadine tells everyone that she was with Marsh.
I was not expecting that.
I mean, she was kind of forced into telling them because then, I don't
think she was, though. I mean, I think
she didn't have to know that... They didn't have to know that she was with him on this secret off-the-books trip to Jamaica.
Right. Yeah, like she could have just been, it was an off-the-books trip that I fabricated or whatever. I guess they would have asked why. Yeah. But I think it was, like, she was finally just fed up with hiding it. And
I think so, too.
I think that she really feels deceived by him, especially, she's a little salty that he was going to just dump her before he ran for president.
She is very salty about it. Yeah. But I wonder... I forget if we know how she knew that, but I wonder how she knew that he was getting ready to dump her. I mean, maybe she obviously expected it because when you're going to make a presidential run,
you got to have a wife, you got to have the whole, a husband and be a good father and that whole thing.
Exactly.
So she reveals that she was having an affair with Marsh for the 6 years since he was a senator or whatever. But I think she did that because she reached a point of frustration with the whole staff defending him, like especially Daisy. She's talking about how he was such a good father and a husband and adored his wife.
No, and he was with me.
Yeah, right. And she was like, well, he didn't say that when he was in bed with me. Like, she got all cray-cray.
She did.
Yeah, she did. It was pretty crazy.
I liked it, though.
But I was really proud of her for standing up for herself. And
me too.
They were just like, oh, never mind.
Yeah.
Like, maybe
it's kind of time that she did that.
Yeah. So, but because she did, they found out that there was a time that it was between the dates of May 9th and 11th or something like that Marsh, Munzee, and Jafar Ahmadinejad were all in Jamaica. So they were going through their official schedules, blah, blah, blah. So if Nadine hadn't have revealed their affair and that she covered up those dates,
right, then they wouldn't have known.
Then they wouldn't have known that they were all in Jamaica at that time.
Exactly. She has a banging memory.
Yeah, right?
Because she's like,
May
the
9th
date,
through
these
11th.
dates.
Well, I mean, and also we don't know how often she fabricated his schedule.
Yeah,
so maybe
true.
it was just that one time that she did. Or, I mean, maybe it was other times as well. But, you know, I feel like if it was one time, it could have... she could have just remembered it.
Right.
So then Elizabeth goes to the president with this information that they think it's Ahmadinejad, and the president wants her to set up a meeting with him off the books.
Yeah.
Though, to vet him to see what, you know, his involvement is.
And I was kind of surprised by that, because that's a straight up like, hey, we want you to know. Like, I thought that they would go a more secretive route than just being like, hey, we know this is what you're up to. I mean, actually, I guess they probably didn't expect him to so easily be like, yes, we are planning a coup, and I am the leader of it. So.
Well, he rides in on a white horse. Yeah. That scene was, I think they could have cut it earlier, but he, like, legit rides in on a white horse. It was pretty interesting scene.
Yeah.
But, so he's telling them the story about how he quit his position
because of the Ayatollahs.
Yeah,
and their regime
exactly.
and
he butts heads with the leaders or whatever. And she's just straight up like, we know that you're a part of this coup. And he's like, yes. He's like, yep. And he, you know, admits to everything and his involvement, blah, blah. And he does bring up a good point that, you know, the goals with the United States and him, like, when the coup align.
Yeah.
But obviously it's not the right way to go about it.
Right. Well, there's a different way. I mean, obviously the president wants these peace talks and he wants complete peace and nothing, but they think basically that that's not going to happen unless the regime is just totally different.
Exactly.
And
well, something that was interesting that I thought he said is when she brought up Marsha's death and was saying why, like
he's like, I had absolutely nothing to do with that.
He was like, I had nothing to do with that, and then she was, you know, trying to figure it out, and he said, change is messy.
I thought the same thing.
And so it's curious to me that she is so set that Munzee was involved in it, which maybe he knew about it. I don't know. And if the three of them met, you know, to plan this thing, maybe Marsha was having a change of heart or whatever it could have been. Or maybe it was, you know, I can't get involved in this right now when I'm trying to run for president soon, or what it was. But change is messy is kind of like they had to get rid of him for some reason.
Exactly. But he said he had nothing to do with it, so who had something, like, who was it?
Maybe him personally, maybe it was Munzee. Like, I don't know.
I don't know.
So they leave the meeting, and Russell and Elizabeth are in the car, and Elizabeth reveals that her uncle had this same condition that she recognizes is happening with Ahmadinejad.
Spider veins.
With spider veins and the gray
eyes.
around the eyes. And it turns out that it is brain cancer, that he is expected to only live for 2 months.
Right.
So, you know, when they're deciding, you know, do we want to get behind this coup or whatever, and is this coup actually going to work? Because if he only has 2 months to live, then he's the only person that can successfully make this coup happen. And then, but if he's going to die in 2 months, then maybe, you know, it'll just go back.
Well, because even Russell is kind of like romanced by him. He's like, I'm going to recommend the president that we get behind this coup. Because when you have to think, I mean, obviously death and war and attacks are a very bad thing, but if it has an ultimate, you know, every war has an ultimate end goal. And so if they think like this can actually be a better thing for their country and our country and just basically the world in general, then of course, like, why wouldn't we get behind them?
Right.
And even Bess is like, yes, no, he's very powerful and very convincing. And it's just, I mean, I guess it sucks for the coup leaders that I wonder if he told no, he didn't tell all of them because Russell or Munzee didn't know about it.
Well, because Munzee thought that this was just a tactic to get him to try to, you know, play a role in it. But Bess knows that he is the only one that can hold this whole plan together and can hold the country together once the coup happens. So I feel like if he wasn't sick, then maybe we would get behind it. But because there's so much risk in getting behind it. No one else can do what he could. And they need a leader like him, and no one else can do it. So, I mean, there we go. So
then it's like...
So she confronts Munzee.
Right.
And and she asks about, and he thinks that the brain cancer is fake, whatever. And then she asks about, so he's not getting on board by any means.
No.
Or helping them at all. And so she asks about Juliet, and he just says that she's righteous.
Right. So I mean, that's a term that people use in that sort of situation. Like whenever they're, like I always hear of, like what's the word? The bombers who, like the suicide bombers who they think that they're doing it for a mission.
Good cause.
They always say they're like righteous.
Right.
And so I think, I mean, without him giving anything away, I think that was just his way of being like, she's good. She's in a good place. But it was definitely a weird term to say.
Yeah, it was definitely that kind of revealed that she was on his side, or that he was there on the same team.
Because that's something that we had been wondering about. She just disappeared. We assumed that she was on the side of the coup. Well, because last week we learned that Munzee was the mole for her and they were working together. But we didn't know, like, to what effect, if she was being forced to do this. But we clearly learned tonight she's full on in the coup and is one of the major leaders of it.
Yeah. And meanwhile, while these talks are happening, we have this rest of the staff having their pity party down at the little bar. And they're just talking about how this whole thing can cause the entire administration to come tumbling down and all this stuff. They're just like, they're so funny to me. I love
because they're so in it, but they're so out of it at the same time. It's like, oh, let's have our like whiskey at the bar while all Madam Secretaries and
doing all the work. Yeah, exactly. So that leads us to this next thing that happens is that Elizabeth goes on a secret mission to Iran.
Yes.
And obviously she brings it up with Henry that she needs to do this, and he says no way, like does not want her to go there. It's obviously very dangerous. And but she really doesn't have much of a choice.
No, it was, sanctioned by the president, and she even says, take it up with him if you want to. And I mean, she's clearly taking a huge risk for herself and for her family, but I mean, in order to potentially save our country, which, I mean, kind of got to go,
Exactly.
Right?
But Henry is like, I know what you're going to say, like, you signed up for this, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, at the same time, that's your wife and the mother of your children, and you, of course, don't want to see her go.
I would never, ever, ever want to see that happen. But I loved the little moments, like, of her, I didn't love her talking about her will and about how he should marry another person and that sort of thing.
I don't want you talking about that.
I know. But I thought it was funny that she's like, no, not this girl.
Yeah, she had a whole list of people that he shouldn't marry.
Yeah.
But they definitely were doing a very good job of building it up before she left, because not only that scene with, this could be our last night together or whatever, but also because it's Allison's 16th birthday, and they have this tradition of Henry making pancakes and then doing the silly string fight, which, I mean, she's 16, like, should we still be doing that? But no, that's a personal, it's a personal side note. But, so she's, like, missing this big weekend of family traditions and whatever, and, it's a very, this could be the last time we see each other type of feel. Because they're like, we love you so much, like, I miss you already.
I just really love seeing the family aspect of her, though.
Yeah.
Because she's such, like, a ball buster in every other way, and I love seeing her, like, I don't know, just being, like, soft and, like, oh, I actually have a real life underneath this Secretary of State hat kind of thing.
I love the family to the work-family balance that they have. And, even though, this major thing is happening in the world, she's still, very
still
much
her daughter's
involved.
birthday.
It's still her sweet 16. It's still, she's very much involved in the family affair. So anyway, so then Munzee is out and about with his coffee and whatever. Yeah. But he has the security detail with him. And he goes to the restroom. But before that, the security detail, whatever, goes in and checks it out, checks the tile, puts a little bug in there. And then he goes right in, and we see him lift that same tile and get the wires out and everything, and contacts Juliet.
Right.
So now we know for sure that she is
involved.
Like, severely involved in all of this, like calling the shots almost.
Well, because that's where we get the name of the episode, Tamerlane, because I guess that's what they named the coup.
Yeah.
And he's basically telling her, go ahead, like, let's move it up.
Yeah.
Because she hasn't talked to him in days, so she has no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
But he was smart to turn on the water because he knew that they were going to bug it no matter what. And so they couldn't hear what he was saying, but they knew that he made a call. They got the coordinates and everything. So.
Yeah. So they got the coordinates from the call, but they don't know what they said. But meanwhile, Elizabeth has already landed in Iran, and she's on the way there, but she gets a call from the president saying, look, we have these coordinates. We don't know what they mean, though.
Right.
And so there's really only a few options here. Either they moved it up, and it's going to happen any moment now, or whatever it is, or they're calling it off, or I don't know what else could happen. But really those two options, or they're just not doing anything right now.
Pretty much.
But yeah, so she's staying with Minister Giovanni, Zahed Giovanni, and his family. And another really big build-up scene. We're meeting his family and his cute little sons, and his wife is amazing. And
I'm literally getting like teary even thinking about this.
And we see how strong of a relationship Zahed and Elizabeth have formed.
Yeah.
And that he's her CIA boyfriend and this whole thing, and they can really trust each other.
Exactly. Which never, I mean, we even saw in like 2 episodes ago, this is stuff that, you know, they're having to build their relationship. Like, they've had a relationship in the past, but obviously he is a foreign minister in Iran. She's the Secretary of State in the United States. Our countries don't necessarily get along all the time.
Like, it's not natural to be best friends.
Right.
Exactly.
And the fact that, like, that's what just kills me about this episode, because thinking about the possibility, obviously it's a television show, but to think about, you know, the possibility of someone, like the two actually being able to work together and really having a good relationship, it's just like so many steps could have been taken.
Yeah.
And now they're not.
Exactly. And she tells him about the coup and how, you know, there are 2 very high profile United States officials who are behind this, and she doesn't know how many others could be potentially.
Right.
But she has to convince him that she's on his side, that the president is on his side, and that she's, you know, a good guy here and isn't trying to trick him in any way. And I think she really proves that by having minimum security with her, because they do want to keep this visit secret.
Right.
Well, or as secret as possible. And so he believes her, and she
gives him the coordinates.
Yeah, and so she goes ahead and tells him the information.
Right.
He contacts the president? The
Shiraz.
president, yeah. And so they are very appreciative of all the information and whatever. So that's why they believe her. So she stays. She makes a phone call to Allison, tell her happy birthday. Talks to Henry. Very cute little phone conversation.
It was.
And not only is her security detail really concerned with, like, whether or not she got to tell her daughter happy birthday, but so is Zahed.
Right.
Which is, you know, we just love him even more.
I'm getting teary-eyed right now.
Yeah. So and then the son comes in the living room, and, you know, they're just talking about he needs help with his homework.
Algebra problem.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden there is the attack in the living room.
Huge explosion.
Huge explosion. It made both of us jump out of our seats. Like, I knew it was coming because of the preview, but even like I wasn't expecting it.
We were just like,
yeah. Oh, and it was so close to her too. Like, and he was further back, but she was right next to the window.
Right.
And
we see him get shot.
Yeah, and we see her security jump on her, protecting her, and he's the one that ends up dying.
Yeah.
So the security detail dies. There was one casualty there, and then also Zahed.
Right. And his son watching the entire thing and just screaming, that literally, like, ripped my heart out of my chest. Because, I mean, think about the after effects of this. Like, this is his dad. He just watched his dad get murdered.
Yeah.
And, it's just crazy.
Yeah, and it's because this lady is in your house, and it's just, you know, that's I can't even imagine. So then after that, they lose all communication with the detail, which they talked to one guy later who had to go undercover, but then they lose signal there.
Yeah.
But they don't know if Elizabeth is alive or what her status is.
But why did they... Oh, I guess because a complete regime change. I was going to be like, why did they go after Zahed? But because he's not one of the ones that...
Well, he is a partner with the president.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they knew that Elizabeth wasn't, you know, a part of it.
Well, they didn't know that she was there. That was the plan. That was part of Tamerlane, was to attack Zahed and to kill him.
Right.
So it just kind of sucks that she was there at the same time, I guess.
Yeah. Do you think they really didn't know that she was there? I feel like maybe they might have. I don't know.
Well, I think it was just part of the attack because they wanted to kill every part of the regime.
The whole regime, yeah. So then the news of the coup releases. That whole scene with Jason and Stevie, that line just killed me.
Which line?
He was like, that's cool or whatever, and Stevie was like, what's cool? I was like, yeah, maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe not do that.
It's a little awkward.
But then, so Henry gets a call from Nadine, and he goes down there and is talking to the president, and he was really defending her to the president, and Russell was like, remember who you're talking to. But he didn't care. I mean, and he shouldn't have.
Of course, that's his wife.
And he's mainly upset, not only because they don't know Elizabeth's status, but because it was a deliberately small detail. And that just puts her at a much larger risk, obviously, especially when it is so dangerous. So he is just saying, if anything happens or I find out anything, that I'm putting you responsible for all of this.
Exactly.
Which he should, So, and then back at home, Stevie kind of figures it out. They're still, saying Allison's 16. she should know all of this information.
Yeah.
So they end up filling Allison in on it. And I guess Stevie just connected the dots with everything, which, kind of makes sense.
Yeah. And then poor little Jason walks in
and they just start the silly string fight.
Yeah.
So that he doesn't, find out. Which is
good big sisters they are.
She's so mature.
Yeah.
So then they cut to a scene and Elizabeth's alive. She's underground. They don't have any communication with the outside world. And I guess that's just to keep it as secure as possible. And then President Shiraz shows up there, and so he's underground with Secretary McCord, but she's also bleeding pretty severely from her arm and on her back, it looked like when she turned around. So we don't really, I hope
I think she's
okay
good,
there. But she, talks, it's like, I hope we're on your side. Like, I hope this doesn't mean that we can't move forward with our peace talks. And he says that he wants that too, but it's too many bodies to bury. So...
Oh, I don't know. That's what it's going to be.
So we don't really know what's going to happen.
What the peace backlash, right?
Yeah, exactly. And
but that's how we know that the coup has failed, because she even says that. She's like, "So is you being alive in here my information that it's failed?"
Yeah,
and which is huge that it failed, because no one thought that it would, because but he credits it to her. He's like, it's because of the information that you gave us, and that's exactly how we know that you absolutely weren't behind it, and your country wasn't, because without that information it could have gone very differently.
Yeah.
So I wonder if Juliet's alive, because that's the information that she gave to him.
Yeah, well, at the end, she gets that email from Juliet.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so the president receives news that she is alive. Henry receives news that she's alive. That was a great scene.
It was such a great scene.
That was a really great scene.
He's an amazing actor.
Yeah, that's when the tears came, when he found out, and he's with the daughters, and they find out she's alive, and then the staff finds out that she's alive, and it's just, they're obviously, she's coming home, they're excited, because they just didn't even know her state at that point, and so to hear that she's alive and then coming home safely is, obviously just a huge relief. So then I really liked this choice in the storyline, that President Dalton decides to not cover this up.
Me too.
And that he decides, you know what, the cover-up would be way worse than, to cover it up and lie about it would be way worse than America finding out, in the world finding out exactly what's going on.
Right.
So he makes a really great speech. That was just the end of this episode was amazing.
It was.
So he makes a great speech and really just
lays it all out there.
Yeah. And is very honest and is saying, obviously we're not going to stop until this is all figured out, and the only thing we want is peace. And, that was a really great speech. And I am so happy with that choice of not covering it up, because that would just be this whole other thing. And that made me like him so much more. Because
me too.
This whole season, I'm just like, do we trust him?
I go back and forth, because he and Bess clearly have a special relationship, but then it's like sometimes he's kind of a jerk, sometimes it's like, but he's the president. I mean, you kind of have to do things that aren't the most popular, obviously. But I'm just really glad that he stood up. Like, Russell, I think, said, he's like, because the cover-up is much more than a lie. Because everything like that comes out. And even if it doesn't, ultimately, you never get past the conspiracy theories and whatever. So I'm just really glad that he was upfront about it. And it made me just look at him as more of a stand-up person.
Right, exactly. Because can you imagine if they did go through with whatever cover-up they could have done, and then it coming out later that they knew everything and that it was covered up? That would just... talk about a terrible legacy to leave.
Exactly. And while we're watching that part, they're doing the little montage, and we see Munzee drinking wine. And right at that moment, I was like, oh, that's a gun. But it turned out to be a wine cork.
Well, I was like, was it? But we went around it. But he's obviously filling up the wine glass. Right. And he kind of like had a little smirk on his face, though.
Well, I guess because, I mean, to think about it like, oh, it's over. Like, what can I do at this point? But his character is just quirky and weird, so not that surprised.
Well, we'll just go ahead and say he has a gun hidden in his
smoke detector.
Yeah, which, you would have hoped that they found that when they did that huge sweep. And also that they're, like, surveilling him better than that. Yeah. Like, aren't there cameras on him or people watching him at all times? That's what I figured.
I thought the same thing,
because
too.
Because he, was pouring the wine, went up to the thing, like, saw him doing that, went back to his desk. Like, by the time that all happened, I feel like they probably could have stopped him. But he shoots himself, and...
He's going to be a huge piece of information that we just lost.
Yeah, exactly. That's why they should have had an eye on him, the whole time, like physically there. Yeah. Like camera, the whole thing.
But it's clear that he knew, like, everything's over. My life is
done. Yeah. So that's a huge thing that happens at the end. The speech, Munzee killing himself, and then the email from Juliet. So Elizabeth is back home with Henry in the bedroom, and she receives an email from Juliet that says, "Bess, I want to come in." So that's how it ends. The episode.
Like, is she outside? Is she at the front door?
I want to come in your house right now.
That's what I assumed.
Do you think?
I don't know.
I think she meant like come in to be help. Like talked about it.
Well, because what are her options now? She was a part of this huge coup that failed. I mean, we see at one point whenever the Attorney General is talking to Munzee, whenever she and Bess went to his house to kind of find out more information, and she says, she's like, the president has offered me to grant you a full pardon if you cooperate. Yeah. So I'm sure Juliet's wheels are turning, and she knows, like, okay, they know I was involved, so maybe, like, if I give them some information, then we'll know. Maybe she'll be our source of finding out why Marsh was killed.
Now that we don't have Munzee, especially. Right. And I was kind of surprised. I thought that maybe she died.
I did too.
Yeah, so it was surprising, to get an email from her. But then, now we're just have to see what her involvement is going to be from here on out.
Exactly.
So with that said, let's get into some predictions.
Yes. My mind is like...
And now, your AFTERBUZZ TV predictions.
That was a lot of information. Yeah. And we're not going to be back next week.
Right.
So we have a little time off here.
A little time to
that was the end of our 3-episode arc. So in the previews, we see it's mainly focused on whether or not Bess is okay.
Right.
She seems to be suffering from some PTSD. Like, she obviously saw Zahed die right in front of her.
Her security guard died on top of her.
And that whole experience just being, very traumatic.
And,
I mean, no one should be able to handle something like that with, grace and not have some sort of grieving process at all. But, she even says in the preview, like, I think I'm having a heart attack. It's very serious. So it's really, is she okay? Like, is she going to, but she's Elizabeth. I think she'll toughen it up, but
she'll power
through. Obviously needs to focus on herself after this.
I think that she's definitely going to be facing some troubles, and she's not going to, or she's going to be, her typical self and be like, oh, I'm good, like, I'll tough it out. But then she's going to have something major. I doubt she has a heart attack, but I feel like something major is going to happen.
High anxiety. Yeah. But so what do we think about Juliet? Do we think she's trying to get a pardon?
I think so, because she has to realize, like, I'm screwed right now because everyone knows that she was involved. So I just really hope that Bess doesn't, like, speak to her privately without other people, okaying it. And I don't think she would do that. But, we also have to remember that they have a long relationship, and they've been friends forever, back from the CIA days. So I don't know.
I wonder, Well, hopefully Juliet will have the answers to exactly what Marsh's involvement was and why he was killed.
Yeah.
But also maybe she has some other information that, is a curveball or something.
Yeah.
So
I kind of agree with what you were saying earlier when it comes to Marsh. I think that he was involved and then kind of realized how big this was going to get and wanted, we know that he wanted to run for president and everything. So I think maybe that's where Munzee kind of stepped in and was trying to, that's maybe where the change could come from, because maybe Marsh was more involved at first, and then when it got to be something that it wasn't, then Munzee was taking over. And I mean, what do you do with a person who's changing their mind? And maybe Marsh didn't know that what they were wanting to do was a complete takeover. Right.
Because when you sign up for something like that, you know what you're getting into.
Right.
But maybe he wasn't sure.
Yeah.
But if you're planning to run for president, you don't just make those decisions just,
lightly.
Yeah, maybe I'll join a coup today.
Sure.
But, yeah.
Let's go to Jamaica.
Sounds good. Fabricate my schedule, Nadine. Thanks. But, yeah, so that just about does it for us tonight. Any other predictions?
That's it for me right now. My mind is still, jumbled from the craziness of this episode.
An amazing episode. So, in the meantime, we won't be back next week, but where can we find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at April Whisenhant.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Sterling Cates. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you soon.
In a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Hopefully.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.